Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel, Erin Earth Yoga Studies, and today I'm going to start a series of videos beginning with what is yoga? And I will follow up this video with future videos on subjects that are all related to yoga, such as what is Kundalini, what is prana, what is the Bhagavad Gita, what are the Yoga Sutras, what is the Pradipika. What are the loks? What are the gunas? Who are some of the deities? What are our central texts? I'm going to go through many different subject matters in relation to yoga. So today I'm starting with the basic question, what is yoga? Now, why would I have to ask that question? Because yoga has actually been part of our culture for some decades now. And when you say the word yoga, people usually have an idea in their minds about what it is, what they think it is. And that idea in their minds is based on what they have seen, what they've been told, and what they've experienced. So it appears through our mainstream yoga culture that yoga is a stretching fad. And it is a relaxation fad. Now, yoga, the word has also become like a branded name to sell stuff. And it's kind of a health craze in a way. But yoga actually is not even an English word. It is an old word from the ancient language called Sanskrit. It comes to us from ancient India. So this is a foreign word to the English language, so it would be interesting to hear people, and it is interesting to hear people attempt to define it. Usually the definition becomes very superficial for the most part when people try to explain what yoga is. It's pretty vague and usually pretty much nonsense. So when we get down to the nitty-gritty of what yoga as a word itself means, we have to translate it literally. So yoga is translated literally into the Old English word yoke. And we don't use that word very often anymore, but we can update that word by modernizing it a little bit into the more often used word harness. Now, what is a harness? What is a yoke? What is a yoga? So a harness is a restraint device. It is applied to an entity to curb their behavior or behaviors in very specific ways. So when we study yoga and we apply yoga as it is taught to us originally, we would be applying restraint really from beginning to end. And we'll get into the specifics of those restraints when we talk about Patanjali's Eightfold Yoga Path. Okay? So I'm going to actually start with the yoga translation. As we can see, yoga means restraint. It is the application of different types of restraint in different areas of our lives. Next, I am going to address our three central texts for studying yoga. We have an interest in yoga, not superficial yoga, not the stretch, breathe, de-stress class that's really, really good for people, but not yoga unless we've got all of this wrapped up into it and given to our students. If we are really interested in yoga, we will be interested in these three central scriptures, and they will be a major part of our lives, and a major part of our time will be spent studying them and applying what is in them. So first we have the Bhagavad Gita. This is the version I recommend. I will do a video for each of these books and get into the nitty-gritty. This is the version of the Yoga Sutras that I recommend. And third, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and this is the one that I recommend. Why do I recommend these particular versions of the texts? Well, because they're not all created equal. Not all translators, commentators are equal in their ability to translate or in their ability to provide insight into what they are translating. So therefore, the translator has to have a grasp on both languages, not a good grasp on one and kind of a mediocre grasp on the other, because it's going to affect the reader of that translation and how they really understand what's being told to them. So the translators of these texts have to be very careful, and they also have to be very good at what they do and very educated in regard to both languages. So that's why I recommend the translations by Michael Beloved. I spent 15 years studying yoga before I understood it. I instinctively knew that this was the path that I was to take. I recognized the word and a lot of what is within it when I first heard it, when I came back into this life, into this body, into this world. And I knew that it was the path that I was to take, but it took me that long to actually find the right explanation, the right teacher, basically. I listened to and studied from many Indian yogis in terms of what they've written, what they say, what they've lectured. I don't really go around and chase people around like that, but in terms of having access online to what gurus and stuff are saying, you can educate yourself and know what is being said about yoga. Anyway, the point is that I didn't get the understanding. I didn't get the order that I needed to understand all of this. I didn't get the explanation that I needed, or the guidance, or the teaching. So I found a lot of the translations and the teachings of many gurus to be very vague, kind of sort of fluffy in a way, sort of new agey, based on positivity and world peace and social behaviors and stuff. And when I was reading the sutras and attempting to read the Gita and attempting to understand the Pradipika, I was not finding that stuff in the books. It was that what they were saying was different than what was actually being said in the yoga scriptures. And I also found that, I actually went to the Shivananda training back in the year 2000, and these were basically avoided for the most part. Superficially, the Gita is addressed there, but these other two are recommended but not taught from, which is really strange, because this is what people need to know. This is the good stuff. This is the liberation education. So anyway, I also have a couple of books that you can find on Amazon if you would like to buy them. Kundalini Yoga Home Practice, and a book that I wrote called Sun Gazing, Aura Seeing, and Nod Hearing. So these are our three central texts. I recommend the translations by Michael Beloved, and I'd like to move on now to what is the ultimate goal of yoga. So what is yoga all about? What do people want out of yoga? If you start a yoga practice and you say, I'm a yogi or I'm a yogini, what is it that you're saying to people that you want? If a Christian declares themselves as a Christian, or any other religion or spiritual walk of life, if you proclaim something and somebody knows something about that, then they are going to know what it is that you are spiritually after, what your beliefs are, basically. So, what do we do yoga for? The ultimate goal of yoga is purification. Purification of what? It's purification of your psychological atmosphere, basically, your psychological system. This is the system that is running the physical body right now. It's animating it, moving it, bringing life force into it. There are all kinds of equipments inside of this subtle body. And what we want to do through certain activities that we will learn over here in the 8 steps of yoga is we want to purify that space. We want to purify the psychological house that the core self lives in. So we have to engage certain austerities to do that, to accomplish that. And we'll get into those. Now, why do we purify? Why are we trying to purify? Because we want to liberate the self, the spiritual self, from the ever occurring and reoccurring process of material nature called reincarnation. And when we stop this and when we can get out of this and realize the self, and the self can find itself in an environment that is free of anxieties, free of change, free of trauma, we would be in a place that we would know of as heaven. Now this is a lofty goal. This is a big time goal. This is long-term goal. This is what we're after ultimately, but this could take a really long time. In terms of yogic time, this could take a long time. So what are our more immediate goals? What are our short-term goals, our preliminary or sub-goals, as I'm calling them? Well, first of all, through the performance of our yoga activities, our kriyas, our mystic exercises, an improvement or upgrade in the subtle energies, the psychological energies occurs, which will promote better birth conditions in the next body. So we're thinking about the next life and what kind of situation we might find ourselves in the next life. And we would like to do everything that we can to promote the best possible outcome there, where we would be educated and taken care of and guided and encouraged, and just a peaceful, non-traumatic atmosphere in our next family life. That would be nice. It'd be nice to be born into a family of yogis and be able to continue your spiritual education in that family. Because anything can happen when you reincarnate. You never really know what's going to happen, and traumatic things can happen, and our practice can get totally thrown off course when we're migrating from one body to another. So we want to be careful about that and be more conscious of it. A higher goal than that, but not quite as high as this one, is the goal of transcendence to a higher dimension where your practice can be continued, but in, again, a less traumatic place. A place that is more suitable to spiritual work, to the work of liberation, the work of purification. And in this place, we might be able to develop a resistance to taking another physical body and getting it back into the nitty-gritty of that reincarnation process on earth here. So these are our goals in yoga, and how do we get to these goals? What is the specific process of execution in terms of the attainment of these goals? So now we have to go to Patanjali. And thank the Lord, Patanjali existed because he itemized the yoga process for us and broke it down into 8 stages. Okay, so his 8 stages started with our basic social behaviors, our basic lifestyle, our cultural lifestyles, and he said, don't do these things and do these things. So these are kind of like commandments, basic do's and don'ts. The yamas and the niyamas, moral behaviors and observances. These are things that I'm going to get into the details of these 2 stages in another video. The 3rd stage of Patanjali's yoga practice is the asana, the exercise portion. So this is very important. This is a very important part of our purification process, is the combination of the exercises and the breath infusion. Asana, pranayama. Okay, so we stretch the body, we put it into certain postures, we move it, we wiggle it, we contract it, we open it, we stretch it, and while doing that, we are executing this breath infusion exercise. And what does that do? It facilitates an energy change out. So you're getting rid of the contaminants of the body, you're engaging the respiratory system to flush the whole system and the nooks and crannies and the psychological portion. Most of all, we're targeting the psychological portion. As a byproduct of your targeting of your psychic energies, your physical chemical body will also get that thorough cleaning. So why do we do this? We do this because we want oxygen in the system. Oxygen is a higher molecule, a more refined molecule. It changes the environment of your consciousness, and it cleans the mind. Breathing is so important in so many different ways in our lives. And really, I don't think that we can do a whole lot or make a whole lot of spiritual progress if we don't understand the power of breathing and apply it. So while we are doing these exercises and breathing, we are also engaging this fifth stage of yoga, pratyahara, which is the retraction or the withdrawal of our emotional, intellectual, and mental energies back into the self. So the core self, the personal will, the supreme will of consciousness, is going to draw those mental energies in. Instead of those mental energies doing what they want to do, the core self is going to take control, take dominance over them, and draw those energies back into the self, into the local container, into the body, into the mind. The core self can now regulate the practice properly and get to the parts of the body that are resistant to the oxygen. So it's really important that we are accessing all of our attention. We can't be thinking about this and thinking about that and worried about this and that during our yoga practice or during a life that is dedicated to yoga. So the retraction of attention begins a process of the Samyam meditation sequence, stages 6, 7, and 8 of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. So this is a process of meditation beginning with effort. Once we get those attention energies into the self, into the container of the local subtle body, it takes effort to keep them there, to keep them in a condition of clarity, and to keep the core self and its energies contained and not distributed out into the mind. So we have to make effort to stay linked internally to a higher concentration source. And for beginners, this can begin with utilizing something like a simple mantra and accessing the psychic power, the mystic power within the sounds of that mantra and remaining linked to it and to its mystic power. It's a higher power than you may be at, so that's where we want to go. We want to go upward in terms of our linkage. Now, for a more advanced person, in terms of meditation, they may be ready to listen to that nod sound, the inner, endless, beginningless hum, the Om. This is a wonderful and very efficient way to connect to a higher concentration source and to really access some divine energy and bring it into the immediate bodies. And to really, especially bring it into the core self for the sake of the development of the core self and the enrichment of the core self. So this effortful linkage is going to lead to effortless linkage. Practice is going to lead us to the ability to spontaneously connect to that higher concentration source. And those sources can become higher and higher with practice. Now, why do we do all of this? Mental, physical control, lifestyle control, breath control, quality of your inner environment control. We do it for the sake of this. Samadhi means complete insight. So, with complete insight, with the self in the mode of clarity, things can now be known that were once unknown. Things that were once mysterious can now become understood. So in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, he tells us that we take this samadhi now and we look at what was once mysterious. What we once did not understand, we look at it and we do understand. Things like the subtle body, how it works. Things like the movement of the planets and the stars. So he tells us basically that samadhi is like the beginning of your spiritual life. We have to do all of this to get to the spiritual person, to open that spiritual person's eyes so that things can be seen and understood through spiritual eyes instead of just physical eyes or mental eyes even. So with that complete insight, we are elevated beings and we become eligible for these goals to be accomplished. So this is yoga. This is kind of the long of it, even though I could, break this down, or you could maybe break this down in your studies and do a video for almost every single thing that we see listed on this board. A whole talk on each one of these things. Yoga is worth knowing, it's worth understanding. It does not need to be dismissed from our lives. It does not need to be superficialized. It doesn't need to be lessened. It needs to be known, and those people that are interested in it and ready for it have the opportunity, I think, through these particular books that I have shown you, to understand really what yoga is. Not in any vague way, not in any incomplete way or superficial way, but in a real way we can understand yoga. So thank you for listening. The last thing that I want to mention in this video is some things that you should expect to learn about in a yoga class. If you're really learning yoga, then your teacher should be talking about certain things. Now, one of the things that I think that we need to identify and help people sort out is the three portions of our reality that we are currently immediately dealing with right now. So that would be, first, your physical body. So this is obviously your tangible, material, solid body. Okay, it's not going to last forever. It doesn't even last really very long. It lasts, under 100 years. If you're lucky, you get to 100. Now, there's another body that runs that physical body. This is a body of animating life force energy. It's still material energy, but it's made of a finer substance. It's made of a psychic substance or psychological material. And so that is the subtle body. So we have the physical, and we have the subtle or psychological body. Now, these two are part of nature. The physical and the subtle bodies, if you observe them, they are both programmed by nature. Right now they're working in tandem. When your physical body dies, your subtle body will remain living and existing, and it will go on into another dimension for some time, and then probably eventually reincarnate into another physical body. So that leads me to the third portion of the three-part self, which is the core self. This is the spiritual person. So this is you. And the core self is the who that we are trying to liberate from the material reincarnation process. Once the core self awakens to this business of material nature, it realizes that it's being traumatized. Pleasure, pain, whatever it is, it becomes sort of equal in the mind of the core self. It's traumatic, and it's ongoing, and it's kind of terrible in its own way. So the core self awakens to this and decides that it wants to liberate itself from this intercourse of nature. So we talk about reincarnation because there's such a thing as reincarnation. And who is it that's reincarnating? Well, it's not the physical body necessarily. It isn't. It's the subtle body along with its passenger, the silent core self, and sometimes the forgotten. Even to itself, it's forgotten the core self. So our yoga process awakens this core self to the reality of this three-part existence. And it decides maybe that it's had enough, and it's going to engage this process of getting itself out of this mix, out of the matrix. Now, the third thing that you should expect to talk about and learn about in your yoga classes that you should be comfortable with if you're interested in yoga is the yogically related deities. So, there's going to sometimes be mention of Lord Krishna because he did basically speak the entire time in the Bhagavad Gita about yoga to Arjuna. You may hear about Lord Shiva, the author of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. Swami Swatmarama, dedicates and attributes the information in that Pradipika to Lord Shiva, the master of yogis in our universe. So gods and goddesses are going to be brought up, appreciated, honored in yoga class. Yoga comes from the deities, so we recognize our teachers. Our original teachers are those deities. So this is the long of it in a way, even though any of these sections could be taken out, and we could do a lecture on any of this and speak of it for a long time. And yoga is worth speaking about, it's worth learning about, it's worth defending. Its integrity is worth defending. So that's why I'm sharing this. That's why I'm trying to educate people so that those who are ready to take this on can, and they won't be confused, even by something as simple as just a language barrier. So thank you for watching.